We have another installment of our student spotlights. This one's a special edition because we're focusing on graduating students. I'm very lucky to interview Fay. Fay, would you please introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Maria Fay Garcia. I'm a senior this year, graduating in just a little bit, like Martine said. I'm majoring in computer science and mathematics with an emphasis in computer science. My hometown is El Paso, Texas. Um, some things that I like doing outside of school include reading, climbing, hiking. I really enjoy kind of hacking different kinds of technologies. Um, Drawing, just a bunch of stuff, a bunch of different things. And something interesting that people might not generally know about me is that I have been playing piano for the past 17 years. So people don't really find that out about me. I don't get a lot of opportunities to play piano.
Wow, that's a long time. What made you get interested or working on the piano specifically?
My mom thought it was important. Well, I've been playing since I was 5 because I'm 22 now. My mom thought that it was important for me to have an expression of my more creative side because I showed a lot of, aptitude for mathematics and science, and I like to read. So she wanted me to have an avenue through which I could express music and creativity. And so I stuck with it all throughout middle school and high school, and it's still with me today. It's still really important to me.
That's great. It must be a wonderful release to, do all
Yeah,
this homework and then just put your fingers on the keys. Great.
yeah, yeah, of course, yeah.
So you are from Texas originally. What made you decide to attend the University of Arizona, which is a couple of states away?
Well, I'll be honest with you. The number one reason was because they gave me a full scholarship, which my mom really needed, and I needed. But on top of that, it's a wonderful school for a whole range of subjects because obviously I didn't really know what I wanted to do when I first got here. And it's 4.5 hours away from El Paso, so it's close enough that I can, have some independence of my own. But if something really serious happens, which hasn't happened, but if it were to happen, my mom could be here in 4.5 hours. And yeah, it was the location and the financial situation and the academic standing of the university.
Great. And you mentioned that you had a prowess, I guess, in math and the sciences. Your mom encouraged you to have that creative side. So you had all this exposure to different subject areas. So what
Yeah.
made you decide on computer science?
It was a really seemingly difficult decision. It ended up being quite simple. It almost felt like the decision was made for me, kind of like fell into my lap. I started out as a physics and history major, um, and I still very much like have a deep love for both physics and history. But when I took my first computer science class, it kind of just clicked with me, kind of just made sense. And I was like, oh, well, I mean, I can learn stuff like this. And if I do mathematics too, I can kind of get that, fundamental language that underlies everything in STEM basically. And so with the idea that I could either in my graduate studies or in my own studies, in my individual learning, pursue physics, I switched to computer science and math. And I guess the same idea applied for history too. I thought I could just do that on my own later and keep reading history books, which I do. Um, so it kind of just seemed like the natural route to follow. Yeah.
Seems like it's a good fit
Mhm.
overall, and that you're still able to, on your own self motivation, learn about those subject areas that you're still interested in. Which is great.
Yeah.
Now that you're approaching graduation, maybe you can reflect on what you've enjoyed most while you've been here in computer science at the University of Arizona.
There have been a lot of things that I've enjoyed about the computer science department in general, about, the degree plan specifically. But probably the foremost thing in my mind is the UGTA program. I have been a part of the UGTA program for the past 2 years until very recently. Um, and when I when I myself was going through 144 and 244, I had such a passion for like learning the material, and I saw like a lot of my peers were struggling, and I kind of was like, well, if I were a TA, I could, guide them. I could like work with them and like maybe show them the beauty that I see in this material. A lot of people are just trying to get through the class, which is understandable, but you know, you get that student every once in a while who just like is enraptured while they're listening to you. And that's why I wanted to do it, is just to like share the beauty that I saw with other people, with other students. And so I got to do that for several semesters, and I was really happy with that. Another thing that I was happy with in the CS department was finding people who thought the same way that I did. I've met, a lot of like-minded people over the past couple of years. Last summer, I had the great luck to be at Stanford with three other CS Arizona undergraduates who I've remained friends with this year. And so that was just like phenomenal because we were like all at Stanford, and it was just like some huge coincidence that we all ended up there. And that's been the number two, probably. And the third thing is that I feel like my classes taught me how to teach myself. I think that's the biggest takeaway that I have from my undergraduate studies, is that I've learned how to teach myself material.
Good to hear that independence of willingness to learn on your own. Out of curiosity, that trip that you talked about in Stanford, were you all there as part of a program, or you just happened to all be visiting at the same place, or how did that
Yeah,
happen?
we all took part in the Links undergraduate research program. So we were all doing research with professors at Stanford for 8 weeks. Coincidentally, unrelatedly, my roommate this year also did the program, but not last year. She did it the year before that. So it's just a wild coincidence that we're all like such a big part of each other's lives. But that research program was, fantastic because we were at Stanford, and like it was wonderful. Yeah. So we were all there for 8 weeks, and then we came back and we stayed friends. So
It's good to hear that those relationships are long lasting and hope they continue.
me too.
That's, that building of those relationships is really important and
Yeah.
something very positive. You're also an honor student,
Yeah.
and you're currently working on your honors project. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm currently working with Professor Russell Lewis on a project on implementing subcontexts of virtual memory. So that's a lot of words, but if I had to explain it in one sentence, I would say we want one process to kind of be able to recreate another process's memory in its own memory, so that we can, call functions from process B with it from within process A. And that's useful because process B doesn't have to be alive when we do that. So it allows us to kind of, replicate and use the functionality of different processes within our own the virtual memory of one process. Yeah.
What are the applications of that? Out of curiosity, I'm not a CS person, so
Yeah, that's
I'd be
fair.
curious. Yeah.
I'm honestly not totally sure. I'm really enjoying the project myself, but I don't totally have a grasp on, the subject matter as a whole. Obviously, Professor Russell Lewis is incredibly advanced in his knowledge of operating systems, systems research in general. So I'm kind of playing catch up. Um, I don't know what applications this could have in the real world, but I think it could be useful somehow. It seems that way.
Gotcha. And just the experience of learning from somebody that has that knowledge is worthwhile experience. And I think the actual act of doing research, doing all the investigative work, writing it up, troubleshooting when things don't go as planned, and so on, is a worthwhile endeavor. So I'm glad that you get to partake in that. Um,
Yes, yeah.
so again, we mentioned that convocations around the corner. You're about ready to complete your requirements, and as you're approaching that, what are you most excited about now that you're that much closer to finishing up?
You mean like in my future?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I've kind of had a change of plans recently in that I applied to several graduate schools. That was my original plan, but I wasn't accepted into any of them. And so I think for the next year, I'm going to be like exploring, meandering, learning new things, meeting new people, finding new applications of my intellect outside of like computer science. And I think that the most exciting thing about that is probably the possibility. That's the most exciting thing. It's also the scariest thing, right? Because you have all this possibility. You could do anything. You could also do nothing, which is the scary part. But yeah, it's a lot of possibility, and with that comes a lot of responsibility. So I'm most excited for being able to try new things, I think. And I think eventually I'm going to find the thing that I actually want to really study and focus on. And at that point, it won't just be like, oh, I'm going to graduate school because I want to get a PhD. It'll be, I'm going to graduate school because I want to study this one thing. And the motivation there will be, I think, the thing that drives home my applications to graduate school.
Gotcha. So graduate school sounds like a big aim right now for you. And in terms of a long-term plan, it looks like you're open to a lot of opportunities and possibilities. You had mentioned that being a teaching assistant was something that was particularly engaging for you and satisfying. Do you see yourself as potentially as an instructor in the future of computer science or maybe in that area?
I think so. My mom is a professor, and so I grew up on college campuses. I was born on a college campus. I spent all my time as a child on a college campus, and so I've always kind of understood that I'm going to be a professor someday. I think that's the natural path for me, or if not a professor, some, analogous equivalent. Um, but yeah, I think I will be a professor someday, and if not, I think I will be teaching in some capacity because that's really what I enjoy doing is just sharing knowledge and sharing my view of the world with other people.
That's great. We would always welcome Dr. Garcia back. Yeah, to teach
Yes.
for us. So that'd be great because you'd be an alumni instructor and a
Yeah.
professor, and we would love that.
Hmm.
So that's wonderful. So again, thank you for taking the time to chat with us. Before we end our interview, just have one question for you. What advice would you give to an incoming student? Maybe one who's from Texas, maybe one whose parent also encouraged them to explore the creative side with the piano. What advice would you give to somebody who's just starting off at the University of Arizona pursuing computer science?
I think I would say, and this advice could be easily misconstrued, but I think I would say that it's not that deep, basically. And I think that I can take this advice too. But I would basically say like everything you do here feels really big and serious because you're an adult and if you start college at 18, you've just left the house and you're starting to make your own decisions and everything feels, momentous and like that it could tip the scales in your life and send you down one path or another. And that's true, but it also doesn't really have that big of an impact on your life insofar as that you can always do something else. You can always change. You can always say, actually, I don't want to do physics. I want to do computer science instead. Or I don't want to do computer science. I want to do history instead. You can join clubs. You can meet new people. You can, dedicate yourself to whatever you want to spend time on. And it's really nothing to stress about. I mean, it's inherently worrisome, I think, a lot of the time, especially if you are prone to worrying like I am. But there's so much opportunity. And you should give yourself the freedom to try everything that you want to try, even if it's just for a week.
Yeah, that's great. It sounds like you're advocating for folks to explore, engage, and that there's room to find what you need to find, and you will find it
Yeah.
eventually. It's great.
Yeah.
Great advice, Faye. Again, I want to thank you for taking the time to do this interview and share your thoughts and your experiences with the department and at the university.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for this opportunity.